Gina DeLuca here. Okay, today I am going to be doing a spiral straight pour. It's been a minute since I've done one of those. And I got these awesome 16-inch round canvases in, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to do another spiral straight pour because I just love these things. So the colors we'll be working with today, I have Liquitex Basics in Dioxazine Purple, the Decoart Americana Decor Metallics in Amethyst, Copper, and Soft Gold. So these Decoart paints dry matte. And when you use a paint that dries matte with a paint that has a glossier finish, it doesn't have to be glossy, it just has to be glossier. Then you wind up getting these awesome cells. So the Liquitex Basic line works really well. Several of the Amsterdams that I've tried work well, and Arteza works well. Yeah, so these paints have been mixed 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol. And then that mixture is thinned with my concoction of 90% water and 10% Floetrol until I get the consistency that I'm looking for, which is, this is about a 2 on my consistency scale. It does make a mound, but it disappears very quickly. Makes a nice thin even stream off of my stick. If the stream is not even, if it's coming out lumpy, then you need to mix your paints more. It should be a nice even stream, like a pencil lead. Have you seen the Fluid Art inspiration cards? If you have, you can fast forward about a minute, but if you have not, what we have are 52 cards. There are 42 technique cards, and each technique card has an associated video here on YouTube that will give you the exact paint brand, consistency, the recipe, everything you need to know about the technique, all of the stuff that I can't fit on a card. This is the picture of the painting in that particular video. This box contains a tip for that particular technique. And here at the bottom, we have the color palette that was used in this painting. And then these 2 boxes can be used together as the basis of a 2-color palette, or you can build off of those 2 colors. There are also 8 bonus color palette cards. Each one has 5 color palettes. You can use all of the colors or just some of the colors. Mix and match the bonus color palette cards with the technique cards, and you have more combinations than you could ever paint in a lifetime. These are available at my website, ginadeluca.net, and also at amazon.com. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is put some paint in my cup to make sure that I have enough to get the reaction that I need. So I put 2 ounces in this cup, and I'm going to lay down a base coat. I have already covered my edges, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One, when I am mixing a straight pour with Floetrol, it is mixed pretty thin, and it often does not give the best coverage on the sides. But these round canvases have a little added feature. You have these little puckers on the side where the canvas wraps around, and you really want to make sure that that gets covered well. Otherwise the canvas will show through. So if you cover it first, with straight paint, you will have a much better coverage on the sides. And then we also still want to cover the sides with the wet paint so that the paint that you are tilting off the sides, or in this case spinning, you want it to have a nice primed side to slide over. If it's dry, it may resist the wet paint. So just doing this little extra step will make sure that your sides look as glorious as the top. Okay, my base coat is down. Just gonna pop these bubbles in my base coat so that they don't pop up through my pour later on. That is coincidentally why I use the same color for my background and my base coat. So the background is what goes in the cup, because that is the color that will follow the background, and then the other cells, the other paints become cells. The base coat is what goes on the canvas first, because something has to stick to your canvas first. Okay, so now I'm going to put, hopefully I'll be able to get that on camera. I'm going to put the rest of my paints in my cup. I'm going to pour from up high because I want these paints to sink and churn and blend. You hear that plop? That's a good thing. So if you don't put down a base coat, then your poured paints will be what hits the canvas first. Now for the cupper. And the edges will stick, and then the rest of the paints will roll over top of that, and that's going to happen the entire time that you're tilting or spinning or stretching. And so sometimes some of the coolest stuff happens on the edges and you will lose that. It can certainly change your composition greatly. Whereas if you lay down a base coat and stretch it out, it stretches evenly. Okay. I do like to put the highest contrast in the two paints that have the highest contrast in first and last. So the dark purple was the first, and this soft gold is the last. All right, and I'm going to take what is left in my cup and go over top of the paints that are coming to the top so that all of the paints have a chance to react. Alrighty, so I'm going to start in the middle. This might be too full. Start in the middle, pour fast, spin slow. I don't want to spin too fast. Oh, I'm getting off center here. Because I want to make sure that it looks more like a spiral than a ring pour. And generally, there we go. So even though that soft gold was the last color I put in, some of it always seems to get to the bottom of the cup, whatever that last color is. And that comes out last, and that's how you get this awesome contrast in the center. That is what gives it the illusion of glowing. And the closer I get to the end of my cup, the closer I get to the canvas, the slower I spin. Ten on the dismount. Yeehaw. Okay. So far, so good. Gonna pop these bubbles. This technique does create a lot of bubbles. And what happens when you pop these bubbles, sometimes the bubbles that you are popping are actually sitting underneath that top layer, and it'll bring it to the top, but it brings a little bit of this paint with it. And the cool thing about these Decoart paints, when used with the right paint, in this case, the Liquitex Basics, it has a hydrophobic effect. So you'll get these little tiny cells, and so the air bubble will come up, it'll bring the paint with it. Satchmo's up to no good. You'll hear a tiny cell. You'll see a tiny little cell, and then as it sits there, it grows. Like these here are starting to grow. So what's going to happen is most of what's happening on this edge will probably get spun off, and this inner area here will wind up becoming the focus, and this will get stretched out more. Going to lose a lot of this purple, which bums me out. I wish there was a bit more of that in there, but I can kind of see it in here, so I will do my best to keep some of that. One more torch before I spin. Okay. And I do like to let this sit for a bit. Let that paint puddle percolate. Let these cells pop up, because what happens is they'll pop up and then I spin it and they stretch and they get bigger, and you get bolder cells and a very cool 3D effect. So patience is really important here. I know it's hard. It's hard for all of us. But it's worth it. Just trying to make sure that my spiral is centered as much as possible. Okay, let's give it a spin. I feel like this might still be a lot of paint on here, but I kind of like this composition just the way it is. I don't think I want to spin off more than what I have. Okay, so I am going to get this off of the spinner. I'm going to let it sit for a little bit and see what cells develop, and I will bring you in for a close-up. And yeah, so back in a few. Okay, here it is wet. It has been sitting for a while. You can see those pop-up cells came in and filled up a lot of that negative space, but still have that nice shadowy effect there in the center area. Some really cool Boulder cell action. As you can see that purple metallic, the way that that glows against that dioxazine purple. That's why I wanted more of it to show up, because it has a really cool effect. But you know, the paints give us what the paints give us. But some very, very cool cell action. Definitely has that glowing effect that I love to go for. And yeah, so I'm gonna let this dry, and I will bring you in for a second close-up when it's dry. It will definitely appear more matte once it's dry, but you will see the finished product. Hang tight. Okay, so here it is. Straight pours, this particular kind of straight pour, when it is dry, before it is varnished, they're kind of meh, you know, that because it's a matte paint, like that's what's creating the cell, is the matte paint. It doesn't really have much life once it's dry, but you can see how that background color, that deepest purple, how that is glossier. You can see it like right in between that darkest area. And that is what is creating that hydrophobic effect. But what you will notice, I did get a bit of separation in that paint, and I think that was actually a combination of factors. My paint was a bit thinner than usual, and it has been cold, and it was a lot of paint. So it could be that combination of factors that caused that to happen. But that is not to say that this painting is ruined by that. When it is varnished, it actually kind of adds to the dimension. So if you do this and you see that kind of cracking, you know, do not panic. Do not feel like your painting is ruined. This camera is just not knowing how to focus on these colors. It's very confused. But when it is varnished, you know, it's actually that darkest color that's kind of poking through. So it actually adds to the dimension. So I'm not heartbroken that that happened. But good spiral effect on this one. And once this is varnished, all of those colors will bling as you would hope they would. But they don't look like much when they dry. Don't panic. It's okay. Floetrol dries matte. These paints are matte, so it's going to dry very flat. You're not going to have any kind of gloss action happening. You can't really get these kind of cells and have a glossy finish when it's first dried. You have to varnish. But there it is. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Please do like, share, and subscribe and all that good stuff. If you are subscribed, please make sure that you click that bell. If you don't click the bell, you won't receive notifications when I put up new uploads. Check out the description box below for links to my PayPal tip jar if you feel so inclined. The links to my affiliates and coupon codes can also be found in the description box below. And the link to my website, GinaDeLuca.net, where you can find my art and music and fluid art inspiration cards for sale. And also you will find the link to our Facebook group, Go Make Some Art. Join us there. Post your masterpieces. Ask your questions. Get some inspiration. A good time is had by most. It is the internet after all. Alrighty. That is going to be it for me for today. I hope y'all have a beautiful day. Now go make some art.